because this is a perfect analogy for what we're going to be talking about today. The vast majority of us in this room, very smart people in this room, were not as effective as we could have been in this activity. We didn't get it right. And the same is true when it comes to speaking in public, particularly when spontaneous speaking. It's little things that make a big difference in being effective. So today we're going to talk about little things in terms of your approach, your attitude, your practice that can change how you feel when you speak in public. And we're going to be talking primarily about one type of public speaking. Not the type that you plan for in advance, the type that you actually spend time thinking about, you might even create slides for. These are the keynotes, the conference presentation, the formal toasts.
My mana is gone.
That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about spontaneous speaking. When you're in a situation that you're asked to speak off the cuff and in the moment. What we're going through today is actually the result of a workshop I created here for the business school. Several years ago, a survey was taken among the students, and they said, what are things we could do to help make you more successful? And at the top of that list was this notion of responding to cold calls. Does everybody know what a cold call is? It's where the mean professor like me looks at some students and says, "What do you think?" And there was a lot of panic and a lot of silence. So as a result of that, this workshop was created, and a vast majority of first-year students here at the GSB go through this workshop. So I'm going to walk you through sort of a hybrid version of what they do. The reality is that spontaneous speaking is actually more prevalent than planned speaking. Perhaps it's giving introductions. You're at a dinner and somebody says, "You know so-and-so, would you mind introducing me?" Maybe it's giving feedback in the moment. Your boss turns to you and says, "Would you tell me what you think?" It could be a surprise toast. Or finally, it could be during the Q&A session. And by the way, we will leave plenty of time at the end of our day today for Q&A. I'd love to hear the questions you have about this topic or other topics related to communicating. So our agenda is simple. In order to be an effective communicator, regardless of if it's planned or spontaneous, you need to have your anxiety under control. So we'll start there. Second, what we're going to talk about is some ground rules for the interactivity we'll have today, and then finally we're going to get into the heart of what we will be covering. And again, as I said, lots of activity, and I invite you to participate. So let's get started with anxiety management. 85% of people tell us that they're nervous when speaking in public. And I think the other 15% are lying. Okay? We could create a situation where we could make them nervous too. In fact, just this past week, a study from Chapman University asked Americans, what are the things you fear most? And among being caught in a surprise terrorist attack, having your identity stolen, was public speaking. Among the top 5 was speaking in front of others. This is a ubiquitous fear, and one that I believe we can learn to manage. And I use that word manage very carefully, because I don't think we ever want to overcome it. Anxiety actually helps us. It gives us energy, helps us focus, tells us what we're doing is important, but we want to learn to manage it. So I'd like to introduce you to a few techniques that can work, and all of these techniques are based on academic research. But before we get there, I'd love to ask you, what does it feel like when you're sitting in the audience watching a nervous speaker present? How do you feel? Just shout out a few things. How do you feel? Uncomfortable. I heard many of you going, yes, uncomfortable. It feels very awkward, doesn't it? So what do? Now, a couple of you probably like watching somebody suffer, okay? But most of us don't. So what do? We sit there and we nod and smile, or we disengage. And to the nervous speaker looking out at his or her audience, seeing a bunch of people nodding or disengaged, that does not help, okay? So we need to learn to manage our anxiety, because fundamentally, your job as a communicator, regardless of if it's planned or spontaneous, is to make your audience comfortable. Because if they're comfortable, they can receive your message. And when I say comfortable, I am not referring to the fact that your message has to be sugar-coated and nice for them to hear. It can be a harsh message, but they have to be in a place where they can receive it. So it's incumbent on you as a communicator to help your audience feel comfortable. And we do that by managing our anxiety. So let me introduce you to a few techniques that I think you can use right away to help you feel more comfortable. The first has to do with when you begin to feel those anxiety symptoms. For most people, this happens in the initial minutes prior to speaking. In this situation, what happens is many of us begin to feel whatever it is that happens to you. Maybe your stomach gets a little gurgly, maybe your legs begin to shake, maybe you begin to perspire. And then we start to say to ourselves, oh my goodness, I'm nervous. Uh-oh, they're gonna tell I'm nervous. This is not gonna go well. And we start spiraling out of control.
How are you on
So
that?
research on mindful attention tells us that when we begin to feel those anxiety symptoms, we simply greet our anxiety and say, hey, this is me feeling nervous. I'm about to do something of consequence. And simply by greeting your anxiety and acknowledging it, that it's normal and natural. Heck, 85% of people tell us they have it. You actually can stem the tide of that anxiety spiraling out of control. It's not necessarily going to reduce the anxiety, but it will stop it from spinning up. So the next time you begin to feel those anxiety signs, take a deep breath and say, this is me feeling anxious. I notice a few of you taking some notes. There's a handout that will come at the end that has everything that I'm supposed to say, okay? Can't guarantee I'm gonna say it, but you'll have it there. In addition to this approach, a technique that works very well, and this is a technique that I helped do some research on way back when I was in graduate school, has to do with reframing how you see the speaking situation. Most of us, when we are up presenting, planned or spontaneous, we feel that we have to do it right. And we feel like we are performing. How many of you have ever acted, done singing or dancing? I'm not gonna ask for performances now, okay. Many of you have. We should note that we could do next year maybe a talent show of alums. It looks like we got the talent there. That's great. So when you perform, you know that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. If you don't hit the right note or your right line at the right time, at the right place, you've made a mistake. It messes up the audience. It messes up the people on stage. But when you present, there is no right way. There's certainly better and worse ways, but there is no one right way. So we need to look at presenting as something other than performance. And what I'd like to suggest is what we need to see this as is a conversation. Right now, I'm having a conversation with 100+ people.
My mana is full.
Rather than saying I'm performing. But it's not enough just to say this is a conversation. I want to give you some concrete things you can do. First, start with questions. Questions by their very nature are dialogic. They're two-way. What was one of the very first things I did here for you? I had you count the number of F's and raise your hands. I asked you a question. That gets your audience involved. It makes it feel to me as the presenter as if we are in conversation. So use questions. They can be rhetorical, they can be polling. Perhaps I actually want to hear information from you. In fact, I use questions when I create an outline for my presentations. Rather than writing bullet points, I list questions that I'm going to answer. And that puts me in that conversational mode. If you were to look at my notes for today's talk, you'll see it's just a series of questions. Right now I'm answering the question, how do we manage our anxiety? Beyond questions, another very useful technique for making us conversational is to use conversational language. Many nervous speakers distance themselves physically. If you've ever seen a nervous speaker present, he or she will say something like this: welcome, I am really excited to be here with you. They pull as far away from you as possible because you threaten us, speakers. You make us nervous, so we want to get away from you. We do the same thing linguistically. We use language that distances ourselves. It's not unusual to hear a nervous speaker say something like, one must consider the ramifications, or today we're going to cover step 1, step 2, step 3. That's very distancing language. To be more conversational, use conversational language. Instead of one must consider, say this is important to you. We all need to be concerned with. Do you hear that inclusive conversational language? It has to do with the pronouns. Instead of step 1, step 2, step 3. First, what we need to do is this. The second thing you should consider is here. Use conversational language. So being conversational can also help you manage your anxiety. The third technique I'd like to share is research that I actually started when I was an undergraduate here. I was very fortunate to study with Phil Zimbardo of the Stanford Prison Experiment fame. Many people don't know that Zim actually was instrumental in starting one of the very first shyness institutes in the world, and especially in the country. And I did some research with him that looked at how your orientation to time influences how you react. And what we learned is if you can bring yourself into the present moment, rather than being worried about the future consequences, you can actually be less nervous. Most of us, when we present, are worried about the future consequences. My students are worried they're not going to get the right grade. Some of you are worried you might not get the funding, you might not get the support, you might not get the laughs that you want. All of those are future states. So if we can bring ourselves into the present moment, we're not going to be as concerned about those future states, and therefore we'll be less nervous. There are lots of ways to become present-oriented. I know a professional speaker. He's paid $10,000 an hour to speak. It's a good gig. He gets very nervous. He's up in front of crowds of thousands. Behind the stage, what he does is 100 push-ups right before he comes out. You can't be that physically active and not be in the present moment. Now, I'm not recommending all of us go to that level of exertion because he starts out of breath and sweaty. Okay? But a walk around the building before you speak,
My mana is gone.
there are other ways. If you've ever watched athletes perform and get ready to do their event, they listen to music. They focus on a song or a playlist that helps get them in the moment. You can do things as simple as counting backwards from 100 by tough numbers like 17. I'm going to pause because I know people in the room are trying. Yeah. It gets hard after that third or fourth one, I know. My favorite way to get present-oriented is to say tongue twisters. Saying a tongue twister forces you to be in the moment, otherwise you'll say it wrong. And it has the added benefit of warming up
How
your
are you on
voice.
maps?
Most nervous speakers don't warm up their voice. They retreat inside themselves and start saying all these bad things to themselves. So saying a tongue twister can help you be both present-oriented and warm up your voice. Remember I said today we're going to have a lot of participation? I'm going to ask you to repeat after me my favorite tongue twister. And I like this tongue twister because if you say it wrong, you say a naughty word. And I'm going to be listening to see if I hear any naughty words this morning. Repeat after me. It's only 3 phrases. I slit a sheet. A sheet I slit. And on that slitted sheet I sit. Oh, very good. No shits. Excellent. Very good. Now, in that moment, you weren't worried about, I'm in front of all these people, this is weird, this guy's having me do this. You were so
Need a map?
focused on saying it right and trying to figure out what the naughty word was that you were in the present moment. That's how easy it is. So it's very possible for us to manage our anxiety. We can do it initially by greeting the anxiety when we begin to feel those signs. We can do it when we reframe the situation as a conversation, and we do it when we become present. Those are 3 of many tools that exist to help you manage your anxiety. If you have questions about other ways, I'm happy to chat with you. And at the end, I'm going to point you to some resources that you can refer to help you find additional sources for you. So let's get started on the core part of what we're doing today, which is how to feel more comfortable speaking in spontaneous situations. Some very simple ground rules for you. First, I'm going to identify 4 steps that I believe are critical to becoming effective at speaking in a spontaneous situation. With each of those steps, I'm going to ask you to participate in an activity. None of them are more painful than saying the tongue twister out loud. They may require you to stand up, they might require you to talk to the person next to you, but none of them are painful. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with a phrase or saying that comes from the wonderful world of improvisation. Through the continuing studies program here at Stanford for the past 5 years, I have co-taught a class with Adam Tobin. He is a lecturer in the creative arts department. He teaches film and new media, and he's an expert at improv. And we've partnered together to help people learn how to speak more spontaneously. We call it improvisationally speaking. And Adam has taught me wonderful phrases and ideas from improv that I want to impart to you that really stick. That's why I'm sharing them with you, to help you remember these techniques. And again, at the end of all this, you'll get a handout that has this list.
Blessings.
So let's get started. The very first thing that gets in people's way when it comes to spontaneous speaking is themselves.
Mana is gone.
We get in our own way. We want to be perfect. We want to give the right answer. We want our toast to be incredibly memorable. These things are burdened by our effort, by our trying. The best thing we can do, the first step in our process, is to get ourselves out of the way. Easier said than done. Most of us in this room are in this room because we are type A personalities. We work hard, we think fast, we make sure that we get things right. But that can actually serve as a disservice as we try to speak in the moment. I'd like to demonstrate a little of this for you, and I need your help to do that. So we're going to do our first activity. We are going to do an activity that's called Shout the Wrong Name. In a moment, if you are able and willing, I'm going to ask you to stand. And I am going to ask you for about 30 seconds to look all around you in this environment, and you are going to point at different things. And I know it's rude to point, but for this exercise, please point. I want you to point to things, and you are going to call the things you are pointing to out loud anything but what they really are. So I might point to this and say refrigerator. I might point to this and say cat. I am pointing to anything in your environment around you. It can be the person sitting next to you, standing next to you. You will just shout, and shouting is important, the wrong name. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand and do that. Please raise your hand if you already have the first 5 or 6 things you're going to call out. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We stockpile. You all are excellent game players. I told you the game. Shout the wrong name. And you have already begun figuring out how you're going to master the game. That's your brain trying to help you get it right. I'd like to suggest the only way you can get this activity wrong is by doing what you've just done. There is no way to get this wrong. Okay? Even if I call this a chair, no penalty will be bestowed upon you. Okay? Because I won't know what you were pointing at. You could have been pointing at the floor under the chair, and you called the floor the chair, and you were fine. The point is, we are planning and working to get it right, and there is no way to get it right. Just doing it gets it right. Okay, so let's try this now. We're going to play this game twice. Again, it's for 30 seconds. If you are willing and able, will you please stand up? You can do this seated, by the way, but if you're willing and able, let's stand up. Okay, in a moment, I am about to say go, and I would like for you to point at anything around here, including me. It's okay to point at me. I hope it's not a bad thing you say when you point at me, but point at different things and loudly and proudly call them different than what they are. Ready? Begin. Porcupine, California, salt shaker, car, library, tennis racket, purple, orange, putrid, hello, time. You can stay standing because in a mere moments we're going to do it again. So if you're comfortable standing, we're about to do it again. First, thank you. That was wonderful. I heard great words being called out. It was fun. And some of you in the back were doing it in sync, so it looked like you were doing some 70s disco dance. It was awesome. Okay? This was great. Now, let me ask you just a few questions. Did you notice anything about the words that you were saying? Did we find patterns, perhaps? Maybe some of you were going through fruits and vegetables. A few of you were going through things that started with the letter A, right? That's your brain saying, okay, you told me not to stockpile, so I'm going to try to be a little more devious, and I'm going to give you patterns, okay? Same problem. When we teach that class I told you about, that improvisationally speaking class, we like to say, your brain is there to help you. These things it's doing have helped you be successful, but like a windshield wiper, we just want to wipe those suggestions away and see what happens. So we're going to do this activity again. This time, try the best you can to thank your brain if it provides you with patterns or stockpiles, and just say thank you, brain, and disregard them. Okay, so let's see what happens when we're not stockpiling and we're not playing off patterns. We'll do this for only 15 seconds. See how this feels. Baby steps. Ready? Begin. Kodak. Bicycle chain. Skateboard. Bananas. Purple. Putrid. Time.
Learn anything new. Stay sane.
Please have a seat. Thank you again. Did you notice a difference between the second time and the first time? Yes. Was it a little easier that second time? No. That's okay. We're just starting. These skills are not like a light switch. It's not like you learn these skills and then all of a sudden you can execute on them. This is a wonderful game. This is a wonderful game to train your brain to get out of its own way. You can play this game anywhere, anytime. I like to play this game when I'm sitting in traffic. It makes me feel better than I shout things out. They're not the naughty things that I want to be shouting out, but I shout out things and it helps. You're training yourself to get out of your own way. You're working against the muscle memory that you've developed over the course of your life with a brain that acts very fast to solve problems. But in essence, in spontaneous speaking situations, you put too much pressure on yourself trying to figure out how to get it right. So a game like this teaches us to get out of our own way. It teaches us to see the
Learn
things that
anything
we
new.
do that prevent us from acting spontaneously. In essence, we are reacting rather than responding. To react means to act again. You've thought it and now you're acting on it. That takes too long and it's too thoughtful. We want to respond in a way that's genuine
mana is gone.
and authentic. So the maxim I would like for you to take from this, and again, these maxims come from improvisation, is one of my favorite. Dare to be dull. And in a room like this, telling you dare to be dull is offensive, and I apologize. But this will help. Rather than striving for greatness, dare to be dull. And if you dare to be dull and allow yourself that, you will reach that greatness. It's when you set greatness as your target that it gets in the way of you ever getting there. Because you over-evaluate, you over-analyze, you freeze up. So the first
Learn anything
step in
new.
our process today is to get out of our own way. Dare to be dull. Easier said than done, but once you practice, and a game just as simple as the one we practiced is a great way to do it. But that's not enough. Getting out of our own way is important, but the second step of our process has us change how we see the situation we find ourselves in. We need to see the speaking opportunity that we are a part of as an opportunity rather than a challenge and a threat. When I coach executives on Q&A skills, when they go in front of the media or whatever, investors, they see it as an adversarial experience, me versus them. And one of the first things I work on is change the way you approach it. A Q&A session, for example, is an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity to clarify. It's an opportunity to understand what people are thinking. So if we look at it as an opportunity, it feels very different. We see it differently, and therefore we have more freedom to respond. When I feel that you are challenging me, I am going to do the bare minimum to respond and protect myself. If I see this as an opportunity where I have a chance to explain and expand, I'm going to interact differently. So spontaneous speaking situations are ones that afford you opportunities. So when you're at a corporate dinner and your boss turns to you and says, "Oh, you know him better than the rest. Would you mind introducing him?" You say, "Great, thank you for the opportunity," rather than, right? I better get this right. So see things as an opportunity. I have a game to play
Need
to
a
help
map?
us with this. This is a fun one. The holidays are approaching. We all in this room are going to give and receive gifts. Here's how this game will work. It works best if you have a partner. So I'm hoping you can work with somebody sitting next to you. If there's nobody sitting next to you, you turn around, introduce yourself, great way to connect. If not, you can play this game by yourself. It's just a little harder and you can't do the second part of the game. So after I explain the game, this gives you a chance to get to know somebody. Here's how it works. If you have a partner, you and your partner are going to exchange imaginary gifts. Okay? Pretend you have a gift. It can be a big gift, it can be a small gift. And you will give your gift to your partner. Your partner will take the gift and open it up and will tell you what you gave them. Because you just gave them a gift. So you are going to open up the box,
Learn
and you're going to
anything
look inside, and you are going to say the first thing that comes to your mind in the moment, not the thing you have all just thought of. Or the thing after that. Remember what we talked about before? That still plays. That's still in play. Okay, you're stockpiling.
My mana is gone.
Look in there. My favorite that I said, somebody gave me a gift during playing this game. I looked inside and I saw a frog leg. I don't know why I saw a frog leg, but that's what I said. That's the first part of the activity. Now, the opportunity is twofold in this game. The opportunity is for you, the gift receiver, to name a gift. That's kind of fun. That's an opportunity. It's not a threat. But the real opportunity is for the gift giver, because the gift giver then has to say, so you look and you say, thank you for giving me a frog's leg, and the person will look at you and say, I knew you wanted a frog's leg because. So whatever you find, the person who has received it is going to say, absolutely, I'm so glad you're happy. I got it for you because. So you have to respond to whatever they say, right? What a great opportunity. Now, some of you are sitting there going, oh, that's hard. I don't want to do it. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Others of you are, if you're following this advice, are saying, what a great opportunity, right? So the game, again, is played like this. You and your partner will exchange, each will exchange a gift. One will start, then the other will follow. The first person will give a gift to the second person opens the box, however big the box is, and if the box is big and you find a penny in it, perfect, doesn't matter. If the box is heavy and you find a feather in it, fine. There's no way to get it wrong, okay? Whatever's in the box is in the box. You can return it and get what you wanted later, okay? The person, then, you will name it, you'll say, thank you for the, whatever you saw in the box. The person who gave it to you will say, I'm so glad you're excited. I got it for you because. And you will give a reason that you got them whatever they decided you gave them. Make sense? All right. So very quickly, just in 5 seconds, find a partner if you're willing to do this with a partner. Everybody have a partner? Okay. All right. In your partnerships, pick an A person and a B person. You may stand or sit. It's totally up to you. Pick an A and pick a B. Okay? B goes first. Ha, ha, ha. All right. B give A a gift. B give A a gift. A thank them. And then B will name and give the reason they gave it to him.
Need a map, exile? Stay inquisitive.
If you have not switched, switch please. If you have not switched, switch please.
My mana is gone.
Let's wrap it up in 30 seconds, please. Let's wrap it up. All right, if we can all have our seats. If we can all take our seats, please. I know I'm telling a room of many MBA alums to stop talking, and that's hard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, did you get what you wanted? Pretty neat, huh? You always get what you want. Now, for some of you, this was really hard because you were really taking the challenge and not seeing what was in the box until you looked in there. Okay? Was anybody surprised by what you found in the box? What did you find, sir? What was in the box? What? Wow. Nice. Nice. If you've got a Ferrari, you need a transmission. I like it. Who else found something that was surprising? What did you find? A live unicorn. That's a great gift, right? How was it as the gift giver? Were you surprised at what your partner found in the box? Isn't it interesting that when we give an imaginary gift, knowing that the person's going to name it, we already have in mind what they're going to find? And when they say live unicorn, we go, well, that's interesting, right? So the point of this game is to, one, remind ourselves we have to get out of our own way like we talked about before, but to see this as an opportunity and to have fun. I love watching people play this game. The number of smiles that I saw amongst you, and I have to admit, when I first started, some of you looked a little dour, a little doubting, okay? But in that last game, you were all smiling and looked like you were having fun. So when you reframe the spontaneous speaking opportunity as an opportunity, as something that you can co-create and share, all of a sudden, you are less nervous, less defensive, and you can accomplish something pretty darn good. In this case, a fun outcome. This reminds us of perhaps the most famous of all improvisation sayings, yes and. A lot of us live our communication lives saying no but. Yes and opens up a tremendous amount of opportunities. And this doesn't mean you have to say yes and to a question somebody asked. This just means the approach you take to the situation. So you're going to ask me questions. That's an opportunity. Yes, and I will follow through. Versus no and being defensive. So we've accomplished the first two steps of our process. First, we get out of our own way. And second, we reframe the situation as an opportunity. The next phase is also hard, but very rewarding. And that is to slow down and listen. You need to understand the demands of the requirement you find yourself in order to respond appropriately. But often, we jump ahead. We listen just enough to think we got it, and then we go ahead, starting to think about what we're going to respond, and then we respond. We really need to listen. Because fundamentally, as a communicator, your job is to be in service of your audience. And if you don't understand what your audience is asking or needs, you can't fulfill that obligation. So we need to slow down and listen. I have a fun game. In this game, you are going to SPLLEverythingyousay. TOYOURPARTNER. I will translate. You are going to get with the same partner you just worked with, and you are going to have a very brief conversation about something fun that you plan to do today. I know this is the most fun you're going to have all day, but the next fun thing you're going to do today, you are going to tell your partner what you are going to do that will be fun today, but you are going to do so by SPELLINGIT. Okay? So you're going to spell it. It's okay if you are not a good speller. Okay? You'll see the benefit of doing this. So, with the partner you just worked with, person A is going to go first this time. You are simply going to tell your partner, actually you're going to spell to your partner, what it is of fun, something of fun that you're going to do today. Okay? Do what you were really going to do for fun and not do things like FEEDTHECAT, right? Just because you don't want to spell, right? So, you can use big words. All right, 30 seconds each. Spell to your partner something fun that you're going to do today. Would you like to play? Go ahead. Say it again. Spell it again. Yep. EXCELLENT. IHOPETHETHUIWIN. Thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
Learn anything new?
If you have not switched, switch. Take 30 more seconds with the new partner spelling. GREAT exclamation point. THANKYOU PLEASE TAKEYOURSEAT.
Need a map?
So what did we learn? What did we learn besides that we're not so good at spelling? You have to pause between the words. How did this change your interaction with the person you were interacting with? What did you have to do? Focus.
My mana is gone.
And listen. And you can't be thinking ahead. You have to be in the moment. When you listen and truly understand what the person is trying to say, then you can respond in a better way. Targeted response. We often don't listen. So we start by getting out of our own way. We then reframe the situation as an opportunity. Those are things we do inside our head. But in the moment of interacting, we have to listen first before we can respond to the spontaneous request.
Need a map?
Perhaps my most favorite maxim comes from this activity. Don't just do something, stand there. Listen. Listen. And then respond. Now, how do we respond? That brings us to the fourth part of our process. And that is, we have to tell a story. We respond in a way that has a structure. All stories have structure. We have to respond in a structured way. The key to successful spontaneous speaking, and by the way, planned speaking, is having a structure. I would like to introduce you to two of the most prevalent and popular and useful structures you can use to communicate a message in a spontaneous situation. But before we get there, we have to talk about the value of structure. It increases what is called processing fluency, the effectiveness of which or through which we process information. We actually process structured information roughly 40% more effectively and efficiently than information that's not structured. I love looking out in this audience because you will remember, as I remember, phone numbers. When you had to remember them if you wanted to call somebody. Okay, young folks today don't need to remember phone numbers. They just need to look at a picture, push a button, and then the voice starts talking on the other end. 10-digit phone numbers, it's actually hard to remember 10-digit phone numbers. How did you do it? You chunked it into a structure, 3, 3, and 4. Structure helps us. The same is true when speaking spontaneously or in a planned situation. So let me introduce you to two useful structures. The first useful structure you have probably heard or used in some incarnation. It is the problem, solution, benefit structure. You start by talking about what the issue is, the problem. You then talk about a way of solving it, and then you talk about the benefits of following through on it. Very persuasive, very effective.
How are your maps?
Helps you as the speaker remember it, helps your audience know where you're going with it. When I was a tour guide on this campus many, many, many years ago, what do you think the single most important thing they drilled into our head? It took a full quarter, by the way, to train to be a tour guide here. They used to line us up at one end of the quad and have us walk backwards straight, and if you failed, you had to start over. To this day, I can walk backwards in a straight line because of that. As part of that training, what do you think the most important thing they taught us was? Never lose your tour group. I'm not joking. Never lose your tour group. The same is true as a presenter.
My mana
Never
is gone.
lose your audience. The way you keep your audience on track is by providing structure. None of you would go on a tour with me if I said, "Hi, my name's Matt, let's go." You want to know where you're going, why you're going there, how long it's going to take. You need to set expectations, and structure does that. Problem, solution, benefit is a wonderful structure to have in your back pocket. It's something that you can use quickly when you're in the moment. It can be reframed so it's not always a problem you're talking about. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe there's a market opportunity you want to go out and capture. It's not a problem that we're not doing it, but maybe we'd be better off if we did. So it becomes opportunity solution, which are the steps to achieve it, and then the benefit. Another structure, which works equally well, is the what, so what,
How are your
now
maps?
what structure.
Glad you made
You
it back.
start by talking about what it is. Then you talk about why it's important, and then what the next steps are. This is a wonderful formula for answering questions, for introducing people. So if I'm in the moment somebody asks me to introduce somebody, I change the what to who. I say who they are, why they're important, and what we're going to do next. Maybe listen to them, maybe drink their wine, whatever. What, so what, now what? The reality is this: when you are in a spontaneous speaking situation, you have to do two things simultaneously. You have to figure out what to say and how to say it. These structures help you by telling you how to say it. If you can become comfortable with these structures, you can be in a situation
Need
where
a
you
map?
can respond very ably to spontaneous speaking situations. We're going to practice, because that's what we do. Here's the situation. Is everybody familiar with this child's toy? It's a slinky. You are going to sell this slinky to your partner using either problem, solution, benefit, or opportunity, solution, benefit. What does the slinky provide you?
Do not worry.
Or you can use what, so what, now what. What is it? Why is it important? And the next steps might be to buy it. Okay? So by using that structure, see how already it helps you? It helps you focus. Get with your partner. We're only going to have one partner sell to the other partner. Okay? So get with your partner. One of you will volunteer to sell to the other. Okay? Sell a slinky using problem, solution, benefit, or what, so what, now what. Please begin. The microphone. So when I debrief this, you can go ahead and pass it on. Does that make sense? No, after this activity. Correct.
Amana is gone.
"30 more seconds, please." Excellent. Let's all close the deal, seal the deal. I have never seen more people in one place doing this at the same time. I love it. I teach people to gesture and gesture big. It's great. I love it. So if you were the recipient of the sales pitch, thumbs up. Did they do a good job? Did they use the structure? Awesome. I'm recruiting you all for my next business as my salespeople. Please try to ignore this, but as we're speaking, the handout I told you about is coming around. On the back of that handout, you are going to see a list of structures, the two we talked about and several others, that can help you in spontaneous speaking situations. These structures help because they help you understand how you're going to say what you say. Structure sets you free, and I know that's kind of ironic, but it's true. If you have that structure, then you're free to think about what it is you're going to say. It reduces the cognitive load of figuring out what you're saying and how you're going to say it. All of this is on that handout. So what does this all mean? It means that we have within our ability the tools and the approaches to help us in spontaneous speaking situations. The very first thing we have to do is manage our anxiety, because you can't be an effective speaker if you don't have your anxiety under control. And we talked about how you can do that by greeting your anxiety, reframing as a conversation, and being in the present moment.
Need a map?
Once you do that, you need to practice a series of 4 steps that will help you speak spontaneously. First, you get out of your own way. I would love it if all of you, on your way from here to the football game, point at things and call them the wrong name. It'll be fun. If most of us do it, then it won't be weird. If only 1 and 2 of us do it, it'll be weird. Second, give gifts. By that I mean see your interactions as ones of opportunity, not challenges. Third, take the time to listen. Listen. And then finally, use structures. And you have to practice these structures. I practice these structures on my kids. I have 2 kids. When they ask me questions, I usually answer them in what, so what, now what. They don't know it. But when they go over to their friends' houses and they see their friends ask their dads questions, they don't get what, so what, now what. So, you have to practice. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will become.
My mana is
Ultimately, you have the opportunity before you to become more compelling, more confident, more connected as a speaker if you leverage these techniques. If you're interested in learning more, this is where I do a little plug. Okay, I've written a book. Many of the MBA students who take the strategic communication classes here that I and others teach read it. It's called Speaking Up Without Freaking Out. More importantly, there's a website here that I curate called No Freaking Speaking. And it has lots of information that I've written and others have written about how to become more effective at speaking. So that's the end of my plug. What I'd really like to do is enter into a spontaneous speaking situation with you. And I would love to entertain any questions that you have. There are 2 people who are running around with microphones. So some of us who remember the Phil Donahue show, we're going to do a little bit of that. If you have a question, the microphone will come, and I'm happy to answer it. I think.
John?
Yeah. Oh, we can hear you. Great.
Can you talk about hostile situations?
Hostile situations, yes. So when you find yourself in a challenging situation, first, it should not become a surprise to you. It should not be a surprise. Before you ever speak, you should think about what is the environment going to be like. So it shouldn't surprise you that there might be some challenges in the room. When there are hostile situations that arise, you have to acknowledge it. So if somebody says, "That's a ridiculous idea, why did you come up with that?" To simply say, "So, the idea I came up with was," right? Acknowledge the emotion. I recommend not naming the emotion. Okay? So you sound really angry. I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Now we're arguing over their mental state, right? Emotional state. So I say something like, "I hear you have a lot of passion on this issue," or "I hear there's great concern from you." So you acknowledge the emotion, because otherwise it sits in the room. And then reframe or respond the way that makes sense. So if somebody raises their hand and says, "Your product is ridiculously priced. Why do you charge so much?" I might say, "I hear great concern. And what you're really asking about is the value of our product." I would give my value proposition, and then I would come back and say, "And because of the value we provide, we believe it's priced fairly." So you answer the question about price, but you reframe it in a way that you feel more comfortable answering. So the way to do this is to practice all the skills we just talked about. The only skill that I'm adding to this is the awareness in advance that you might be in that situation. First, I have to truly listen to what I'm hearing, right? It's very easy for me when I hear a challenging question to get all defensive and not hear what the person's asking. I see it as an opportunity to reframe and explain. Okay, so again, you have to practice, but that's how I think you address it. Are there other questions? I see a question back here. Yes, please.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
For a lot of the speaking I do, I have remote audiences. Audiences distributed all over the country with telecom. Any tips for those kinds of audiences?
So when you are speaking in a situation where not everybody is co-located, okay? In fact, right at this very moment, there are people watching this presentation remotely. What you need to do is be mindful of it. Second, try to include engagement techniques where the audience actually has to do something. So physical participation is what we did here through the games. You can ask your audience to imagine something. Imagine what it would be like if, when we try to achieve a goal. Rather than saying, "Here's the goal we're trying to achieve," say, "Imagine what it would be like if." See what that does to you. It pulls you in. I can can take polling questions. Most of the technology that you're referring to has some kind of polling feature. You can open up some kind of wiki or Google Doc or some collaborative tool where people can be doing things and you can be monitoring that while you're presenting. So I might take some breaks, I talk for 10, 15 minutes and say, okay, let's apply this and let's go into this Google Doc I've created and I see what people are doing. So it's about variety and it's about engagement. Those are the ways that you really connect to people who are remote from you. Okay? Other questions? You're pointing? Oh, I've got to look for where the mic is. Yes, please.
This may be similar to the first question,
Sure.
but I do a lot of expert witness testimony. What's your recommendation for handling cross-examination, specifically?
I
Specifically,
feel like I'm
hostile
being cross-examined. Right. So, in any speaking situation that you go into that has some planned element to it, I recommend identifying certain themes that you think are important or believe need to come out. And then with each one of those themes, have some examples and concrete evidence that you can use to support it. You don't go in with memorized
My mana is
terms or ways of saying it. You just have ideas and themes, and then you put them together as necessary. So when I'm in a situation where people are interrogating me, I have certain themes that I want to get across and make sure that I can do that in a way that fits the needs in the moment. If it's hostile, again, the single best tool you have to buy yourself time and to help you answer a question efficiently is paraphrasing. The paraphrase is like the Swiss Army knife of communication. If you remember the show MacGyver, it's your MacGyver tool, right? So when a question comes in, the way you paraphrase it allows you the opportunity to reframe it, to think about your answer, and to pause and make sure you got it right. So when you're under those situations, if you have the opportunity to paraphrase, say, so what you're really asking about is X, Y, and Z, that gives you the opportunity to employ one of these techniques. Now, I've never been an expert witness because I'm not an expert on anything, but those tools, I believe, could be helpful. The microphone is back there. Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. This has been so helpful and enjoyable this
good.
morning.
Thank you.
Would you please show the last screen so we can get down the name of the book that you've
Oh.
written and the information?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think they actually, you might even have an opportunity to, and it's on the sheet too. Everything I said is on the back of that sheet, but I'm happy to have this behind me while I talk. Other questions? Yes, please.
Glad you
Yes,
made it back.
I work with groups that that represent many different cultural backgrounds.
Yes.
So, are there any caveats, or is this a universal strategy?
So in terms of, from your perspective as the speaker, I believe this applies. But whenever you communicate, part of the listening aspect is also thinking about is who is my audience and what are their expectations? So what are the cultural expectations of the audience that I'm presenting? So there might be certain norms and rules that are expected. So when I travel and do talks, I have to take into account where I'm doing the presentation. So I help present in the Ignite program. If you have not heard about the Ignite program here at the GSB, it's fantastic. And I just did a presentation standing in one of these awesome classrooms that have all these cameras, and I just taught 35 people in Santiago, Chile. Right? And I needed to understand the cultural expectations of that area and what they expect and what they're willing to do when I ask them to participate. So it's a part of that listening step where you reflect on what are the expectations of the audience. I think we have time for 2 more questions, and then I'm going to hang around afterwards if anybody has individual questions, but some of these folks really want me to keep on schedule. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask a question. One of the things that you've done effectively in your talking, and I've seen other effective speakers do, is interject humor in their talk. What are the risks and rewards of trying to do that?
Well, first, thank you, and I appreciate all of you laughing. That's the sum total of all my jokes. You've heard them. I am not funny beyond those jokes. So humor is wonderfully connecting. It's wonderfully connecting. It's a great tool for connection. It is very, very risky. Cultural reasons get in the way. Sometimes what you think is funny isn't funny to other people. What research tells us is that if you're going to try to be funny, self-deprecating humor is your best bet, okay? Because it is the least risky. There is nothing worse than putting out a joke and having no response. It actually sets you back farther than if you would have gotten where you would have gotten if the joke would have hit. So
My mana is
basic fundamentals you need to think about with humor. 1, is it funny? How do I know? I ask other people first. Second, what happens if it doesn't work? Have a backup plan. And then third, if you're worried about the answers to those first two, don't do it. Right. One last question, please. The microphone is right here. And then, like I said, I will hang around afterwards. Yes, please.
I'm sort of on the opposite side of this since I am a journalist and I frequently have to ask spontaneous questions of people who have been through media training.
Yes.
So any tips for chinks in the armor, way to ask a question without
made
being
it back.
antagonistic but get a facsimile of a straight answer?
Well, so let me give you two answers. One is I have young boys, and the power of the why is great. Just ask why a couple times, and you can get through that first two layers of training. You know, why do you say that? How do you feel about that? The second bit is what I have found successful in getting people to, I do this to get people to answer in a more authentic way. What I'll do is I'll ask them to give advice. So what advice would you give somebody who's challenged with this? Or what advice would you give to somebody in this situation? And by asking for the advice, it changes the relationship they have to me as the question asker, and I often get much more rich detail. So the power of the why, and then put them in a position of providing guidance, and that can really work. With that, I am going to thank you very much. I welcome you to ask questions later, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Glad you made it back.
How's everyone feeling today? So when I ask you a question, if it feels right to you, I want you to say super. How's everyone feeling today? Super. And I want to honor you for being here because I've been going to seminars and events my whole life. How is it so far for everybody? Now it's a test, right? A lot of people think it's retention. People forget something. Let's do this for a second. Take a right hand, shake it out. How many people here want to learn faster? How many people want to remember more? Yeah?
Do not worry, little beast.
Now put it to your
We
chin.
are friends now.
Where's your chin, everybody? So the number one rule, the art of memory, the art of learning is the art of attention. The art of learning is the art of attention. And really, that's where observation, that's where presence comes in. And so I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite strategies and states to be able to learn any subject or skill faster. How many people like that idea? Now, in order to be able to do this, let me first start by acknowledging you for being here because I believe there's a success formula, and it takes two parts. It takes first showing up. 50% of success is just showing up. And I appreciate your ability to show up here today because most people aren't here. True or true? Right? I mean, I'll also ask questions that we know the answers to.
My mana is
True
gone.
or true, right? And so we show up here, and most people don't show up. I think in life, you want to show up. Show up for your health. Show up for your relationships. Show up for your career. Show up for your service. Just showing up, is that just going to get the job done? No, you have to what? You have to play full out, right? You have to play full out. How many people here like to play? By the way, who are the fastest learners on the planet? Who? I did this to a group of 10,000 people from 60 countries, and a whole table yelled out pygmies. And if anybody knows why pygmies are such great learners, please tell
Welcome,
me.
my friends.
But children, right?
Yeah,
children.
fine.
How fast can a child learn a musical instrument?
Just who I was hoping to see
How fast
today.
can they learn a second
The
or third language?
syndicate.
They learn fast, right? Because they have. Why do children learn quickly? Because why? They don't know. Good. What else? They're curious. They have attention. What else? They have time. Certainly. No limits. They don't have the learned helplessness. Very good. They're not thinking about the mortgage payment. Focus, right? I mean, they're curious and they play a lot. Remember as a kid, you went to your friends, you were like, you
How are
want to
you
come
on
out and
maths?
play? Do you want to play? But later on, we got rid of the word play. We started saying, it's hang out, right? And then all of a sudden there's a difference, right? And the curiosity is important also. There's a Rumi quote from the poet that trade your cleverness for bewilderment. that a great word, bewilderment? When's the last time you're in that state? We're talking about genius states and superhero states. When's the last time you're in that state of bewilderment? So who's in control of your state, by the way? Who's in control of how you feel? What's this, when we're defining a state, how do you define a state? What does it mean? It's like your mood. What else? This is where the active part comes in here. It's your emotions, like a snapshot of your mind and your body, how you feel. Here's the key, do this. Information, do this, put your hands out. Information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. Long-term memory. How many people know this? How many people you hear a song and they'll take you back to when you were a child? Raise your hand. How many people it's not a song, but maybe it's a fragrance or a food that will take you back decades? Because information combined
Up
with
you
emotion
go,
became a
little
long-term memory.
Away!
Right? Because we're not logical, we're what? We don't do things logically all the time. We do things emotionally, right? Because we're not logical, we're biological. Not logical, we're biological. So what I want to talk about is how to unlock what we call your super brain. I'm going to talk about the states, these emotional states where the best of you shows up automatically, where you don't have those limits. Now, in my breakout, I'm going to talk about the strategies, how to read faster, how to remember names, step by step, how to learn another language. Those are the strategies. But you always start with state. Everyone wants to write this down. All learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent.
My mana is gone.
That the emotional state that you feel when you're learning something gets anchored to the learning. Does that make sense? By the way, what was the state that you felt back in school? Primarily, how did you mostly feel in class? Bored, and the other half of class is like confused, right? Now, on a scale of 0 to 10, what's boredom? On a scale of 0 to 10. 0. Anything times 0 becomes what? 0, and that's why a lot of people don't remember what they learned. It's the emotional state. Does that make sense? Let's test this out. Stand up real quick. Stand up. I have no slides for you.
Glad you made it back.
I'm going to take you through exercises. How many people like experiential learning? So it gets in your body, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to play some games. We already said that children are the fastest learners, right? Children are the fastest learners. How many people here feel like you want to learn more in less time? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you have books on your shelf you haven't read. More than one. And becomes, like Lisa Nichols talked about, becomes self-help, not self-help, right? How many people here get more than 10 emails a day? How many people came here today like to have a better memory? How many people forgot why you came here today? Have you ever done that? Walk into a room of your own home and just forgot why you're there? Anyone feel like senior moments are coming a little bit early? Like you're in the shower and you can't remember if you shampooed your hair. And you end up doing it twice, right? Or you misplace things. How many people here know somebody, maybe personally, who misplaces things all the time? The remote control, the Apple remote, their phone. Have you ever found yourself calling your own phone, hoping you kept it on? Or maybe you lose something like your car keys, or not something larger like your car. You ever see the people out in the mall and they're using their car alarm, trying to figure out where they park their car? And what about names? How many people here, honestly, you have trouble remembering people's names? How many people have forgot the name of somebody in this room? Right? And so let's start with my name. Hopefully you remember it. My name is Jim Quick with Quick Learning, and I help people to learn quickly. The question I always get is about my last name. My last name really is Quick. I didn't change it to do what I do. With a name like Quick, you could say my life and my destiny was pretty much planned out. I had to be a runner back in school, which is a lot of pressure when it says Quick right on your shirt. I have to be very careful when I'm driving because the worst name to have on your driver's license when you get pulled over for speeding is the name Quick, right? Because you're not going to talk your way out of that speed. And I get to do my mission, my dharma, which is helping people to learn faster. I think if there's any skill to be able to master the 21st century, something that's going to be a real tangible advantage, it's your ability to learn quickly. And only because this is out of times, because digital overload, digital distraction, I mean, so many things vying for our attention. How do you get things done? And when I talk about speed, I don't talk about just I'm not talking about frantic speed. You could actually learn faster and actually have an ease, a confidence, a peace of mind. How many people would like to have that? be able to succeed, but also have this level of harmony inside of yourself, this clarity of thought. And it's the idea, how many people here read Seven Habits of Highly Effective by Dr. Stephen Covey? What's the seventh habit? What? Sharpen the saw. Very
My
good.
mana is gone.
Sharpen the saw. The metaphor here is if you have all this wood to cut and you have a saw with a dull blade, when do you want to sharpen it? Before you start cutting the wood, right? Because a lot of people are going to work harder because they give a dull blade and they're have to sweat and perspire and work 3 or 4 times harder when they could have sharpened their saw. And so learning how to learn, like Vishen was talking about, that's you sharpening the saw. Because anything that comes afterwards is going to be easier, right? And so if that person's not working harder, they're working what? Smarter. And one of the best ways to work smarter is accessing your genius. So I'm going to test this out. We said that children are the fastest learners, right? That they have this curiosity and they play all the time. Let's see how many people here, raise your hand if you're willing to play. Now, it's been shown in science research by playing more actually creates neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. What's neurogenesis? New growth, new brain cells. How many people like the idea of creating more new brain cells? What about neuroplasticity? What does that mean? More connection. So intelligence, in a way, is not necessarily like Einstein didn't have a bigger brain than anyone here. Probably he was actually less. He had a smaller brain, but in certain areas of his brain, he had highly connectedness. He did these thought experiments where he would put himself in these brainwave states, specifically theta state. The theta state of creativity. That's the state that you're in when you shower. Have many people notice when you're showering, you come up with all these wonderful ideas? It's always when you can't write something down, right? And so that's the theta state. That's a relaxed state of creativity. You're inspired. You come up with new ideas. New things come out of you, right? And I actually took 6 showers before just to prepare for this presentation. So it puts you in a creative state. And so he had more connections in certain areas. And so you could promote that by playing more. And so what I'm going to ask you to do right now is I'm going to ask you to find 2 people in the room you do not know, pair up in 3s, go. Find 2 people you do not know, pair up in 3s. So we're going to go through a quick exercise, and basically what I want to do is we're going to talk about superheroes a lot. I grew up with learning challenges. Some of you know I had a brain injury when I was 5 years old, a head injury that left me with certain disabilities. Teachers would have to repeat themselves 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and then eventually I would just pretend I understood, but I didn't, most of the time did not understand. I had very bad focus issues. I had very bad memory. It took me an extra 3.5 years just to learn how to read.
Need a map?
And I learned how to read by reading comic books, actually. Late at night, something about, any comic book fans here? Or superhero fans? Something about looking at the superheroes and good versus evil and illustrations, the idea that one person can make a difference. How many people believe one person can make a difference, right? That they provide hope and they provide real help. And when I look here, I look at a room full of superheroes. Because I said, in the beginning, I said, it's just showing up and then playing people out. And so what does a superhero do? What's the defining characteristics of a superhero? They have superpowers, right? How many people have found their unique ability, their superpower? Discovering it, right? Your unique talent, your unique strength, something that's unique to you. But then just having a superpower, does that make you a superhero? You have to use that power for what? For good, for some kind of purpose on top of that, right? And so I love sharing space with modern day superheroes, but there are also some modern day supervillains, right? These ideas of these phenomena of digital overload. How many people feel like when you're learning something, it feels like you're taking a sip of water out of a fire hose? Raise your hand, right? And not just that, it has an effect on our health also, right? They call it information fatigue syndrome. Information fatigue syndrome. Everything is a symptom, right? So higher blood pressure, compression of leisure, or even if you have a little bit of free time, you can't even enjoy it because your mind's still multitasking. And also, not just the supervillain of digital overload, but digital distraction. How many people feel like your mind is so distracted and you can't focus on just one thing anymore? Raise your hand. And this is a challenge. That takes away from your ability to be present, your ability to be able to get things done, your ability to be able to be profitable. And I don't just mean financially profitable. That's obvious, right? You're at an age where it's not your muscle power, it's more your mind power. It's not your brute strength, it's your brain strength, right? So the faster you can learn, certainly actually, in all the areas of your life, all the treasures of your life, health, relationships, your career. So what we're going to do is this exercise of play, and then we're going to start with this state, this childhood state of curiosity and wonder. And you're going to meet your individuals, the people that your new friends. And I want you to decide right now who's Batman, who's Superman, and who's Wonder Woman. Go. So who's Batman, who's okay, Batman, raise your hand. All the Batmans, raise your hand. Very good. What about Superman? Raise your hand. And where are Wonder Women? There you go. Remember, information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory, right? And by the way, who's in charge of your emotional state? I am. Who's in control? You are, right? I remember recently I got to introduce two of my modern-day superheroes. It was Richard Branson and Stan Lee. Not Stanley, but Stan Lee. Who's Stan Lee? Yeah, the co-creator of Spider-Man and X-Men and Avengers and Fantastic Four. And we're going to dinner. I remember asking Stan, I was like, I have to know, you've created all these incredible superheroes. Who's your favorite? And he looks at me without a blink. He's like, Iron Man. I'm like, that's awesome. And then he's like, Jim, who's your favorite superhero? And he had this Spider-Man tie, so I was like, Spider-Man. And without a pause, he says, with great power comes... And how do we all know that, right? It's like in our DNA, right? We're going on this superhero journey together here at A-Fest, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, and I grew up with these challenges, and I had, dyslexia, and I flipped things around in my mind. Part of my issues.
My mana
of
is
growing
gone.
up. And I flipped it in my mind. I was like, with great power comes great responsibility. With power, you have great responsibility to wield that power well. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When you take responsibility for something, you have great power to what? To change things, to transform things, to make things better. And a lot of times, how many entrepreneurs are in the room? Raise your hand. Wow, 80% of the room. A lot of times, based on your values, entrepreneurs value things like freedom. They want to be able to do what they want, when they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. Raise your hand if that's you. And sometimes it's hard, as entrepreneurs, to get yourself to do the things that you need to do. How many people also resonate with that you procrastinate? Like, why would you put things why would you delay things that are important that will help you to reach your goals? And you wonder why that is. I would introduce to you, going back to state and strategy, that those two components is probably 80% of it. Because most people who procrastinate they're in a state of procrastination. That's the feeling, right? Or they have poor strategy for executing things, getting things done. And you're like, Jim, where's this exercise? Why am I standing the whole time? Does your physiology affect your psychology? Yes or yes? Because one of the best ways to change your state is touching your body, right? Because as your body moves, your brain moves. As your body moves, your brain grows. You create more neuroplasticity. Actually, you know what supports it? Novelty. What helps you make more of these connections is novelty and nutrition, just like your body, right? You want to build a physical muscle, you give it what? You work it out, you give it exercise, you give it stimulus, novelty, and then you feed that muscle with nutrition. Same thing with your mental muscles. And so what I want to introduce to you is ways of getting into these states and then strategies in the breakouts that help you to specifically build these mental muscles. So you have more mental strength. Just like physically, you want to be stronger, faster, more agile. You could be that mentally also. Stronger, more agile, more focused also. So what we're going to do here is talk about states. What are the highest level states? Peace. Very good. What else? Love. What else? Gratitude. What else? Joy, compassion. So what I want to do, let's pick one of them. Remember we said that when it comes to learning things and getting it into your nervous system, information is not enough because we all know what to do. Common sense, right? We all know, for the most part, how many people know what they should do to make things better, but there's indiscrepancy, but like in terms of not getting things done, right? And so what I'd like to offer you is common sense is not often common practice, right? So how do we get aligned with this? So let's talk about joy. Using more joy in the room throughout the entire event. How do you spread joy? If you wanted to spread joy right now in this room, what would your strategy be? What's one thing you could do? Be joyful. What else? Okay, massage somebody. What else? Hugs, good. Kisses, right? High fives, right? Good. So what I want you to do now is I want Wonder Woman to be in charge, okay? Wonder Woman, raise your hand, Wonder Woman. You are the CEO of the group. You are the CEO of the group. And what we're going to do is you're going to tell and you delegate to Superman and Batman how to spread joy around the room, and they're going to do it for 30 seconds. All right? We're going to put a countdown timer on here. Ready? Go. Information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. Right? The state that you learn something in, the mood and the feeling that you learn something in gets attached to what you want to learn. Also, it's going to motivate you to use it more
My
often.
mana is gone.
You learn. Because here's the thing. Learning is not a spectator sport. Learning is not a spectator sport. I'm going to give you 6 keys to learn anything faster. You can write these down. I want you to remember, be fast. Be fast. 6 keys to learn any subject or skill faster. Now, I want you to think about, if you could learn any subject or skill faster, what would it be? Outside of learning how to learn. That's kind of it. That's what, after learning how to learn, what subject? What are you interested in? Say it out loud. Languages, very good. What else? Computer science, good. What else? Good. I mean, so whether it's martial arts or it's Mandarin, whether it's music or marketing, there are subjects that we're interested in, right? And we live in this expert economy, and we want to be knowledgeable about things, because knowledge is not only power, knowledge is profit, right? And so how do you access those things? I want you to remember, be fast. And just 6 quick tips on how to desensitize you. Now, every single one of these things you're going to understand because you're studying. And me, as your super brain coach, if you will, I want to be your personal trainer for your brain, for your mind. I want to make it faster, sharper. And not everything I'm going to say is going to be something that's brand new. But if I maybe say it in a different way and you control your state, because going back to Stan, when I said
How are you on maps?
responsibility, with great responsibility comes great power. The most important thing to be responsible for is how you feel. Does that make sense? And who controls how you feel? How many people are feeling pretty good right now? Yeah, and notice that these kind of things, you know why? Metaphorically, I look at you more like a thermostat than a thermometer. Is there a difference between a thermometer and thermostat? Yes or yes? A thermometer does what? What does the thermometer do? What's the function? Yeah, it takes the it reflects and it reacts to the environment. Is that true? It just reacts to the environment. And we are sometimes, we're thermometers. We react to the weather, if we're honest, the economy, to politics. We react to how people treat us sometimes. But is there a gap between how someone stimulates us and how we respond? Do we have choice? Yes or yes? The difference between a thermometer and a thermostat, though, is a thermometer reacts to the environment. What's the thermostat do, though? Yeah, it regulates, right? It helps manage. It sets a standard or a vision or a goal, and then what happens to the environment? It raises to be able to do that. Is there a difference? Yes or yes? And so that's where we're going back to responsibility. When we're talking about being responsible, the ability to be able to respond, is how you feel about things, and also how you focus on things. So the B in Be Fast stands for believe. Because if you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, what? You're right. Who said that? Henry Ford said that, right? If you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you're right. Let me show you what a belief is. Stand up real quick. Stand up. You're like, oh, you're one of those teachers. I'm telling you, it's in your body. You have so much intelligence in your body right now. I'll prove it to you. Jump up and down a little bit.
My mana is gone.
Make a little space from the person next to you if you can. So if you went like this, you're ideally not going to take anyone's eye out or anything like that. Okay. Now, stop bouncing. I love the energy, though. Notice where your feet are. I want you to keep your feet stationary the entire time. And what I want you to do is with your right hand, just point forward with your right hand. Your other right hand, sir. Sorry. I know. All right, forward with your right hand. And what I want you to do is without moving your feet, just turn to your right, clockwise, as far as you can go, and notice where you're pointing. As you take your neighbor's eye on. Notice how far you can go, notice where you're pointing. There's the exact spot. Come back center. Now put your arms down. Now I'm going to take you through a really quick visualization exercise. So take a deep breath. Exhale. Close your eyes. Put your arms by your side, out of your pockets, by your side. And breathe slowly. And with your eyes closed, we're going to play a game. I want you just to imagine just imagine that you're raising your arm again, but this time imagine you're turning twice as far, 2 times as far. Like you're getting a good stretch. It's pleasant. Feel that in your body.
Need a mat?
And if you can't imagine it, just imagine that you're imagining it. And then
Learn
again,
anything new?
raise your arm, point forward. And this time, no, with your eyes closed. Imagine, just imagine. Just imagine, just in your mind, see and feel yourself 3 times as far. Just feel it in your body, with your arms by your side. Just imagine it. And then one more time, with a smile on your face, thinking, what does this have to do with it? See and feel yourself turning 4 times in your body. See and feel yourself turning 4 times around like you're comfy, like you're made out of rubber. Great, great stretch. So open your eyes. Now, raise your arm again, point forward with your right hand. And now turn to your right now, as far as you can now go. Wow. Raise your hand or make some noise if you went further the second time. Have a seat, have a seat. Now, some of you went further. Some of you went 25%
Glad you made
further.
it back.
Some of you went 50% further. Yes? Raise your hand if you went further a second time. Now, here's the magic question, right? That you know I'm going to ask you even before I ask it. Were you physically capable of turning that far the first time? Like nobody took a yoga class and my eyes were closed, right? Where was the block of the limitation, if there was one? In your mind, right? In your mind. And you're like, Jim, I didn't have a belief on how far I could turn. How many beliefs do you think we have? Millions and zillions of beliefs, right? Because here's what you want to write down. All behavior is belief driven. All behavior is belief what? Some of you went 25, 50% further with no anything. Remember Vishen was talking about how it's not working hard, but it's you when you're in a certain state of mind, you can go further and it's effortless. How many people have experienced this state of flow before? That
My
state
mana
of
is
flow where
gone.
you lose track of time, where your attention is right there and you're in the moment. And it's the level of challenge is really matching your level of capabilities and you're stretching yourself and you're in that zone, right? Like that we talk about, that Stephen Kotler talks about, the rise of Superman and stealing fire and so on. How many people are familiar with Steve's work, by the way? I'm just curious as context. Okay, so how do you get into those states? One of the ways is just believing that you can. Because you're right, all behavior is belief driven. Some of you went 25, 50% or more. What if you could go 25, 50% more in your business? That effortless. What if you could go 25, 50% even more in your body or in your relationship? Did you work harder the second time? Did you turn the second time, yes or no? No, because it's a state, right? So behavior, so belief. Let me give you an example. I'm going to play this game with you. We're going to do this together collectively. I need some mic runners here, please. There's a couple mic runners. How many people here talking about memory? Because memory, forgetting is a state. When it comes to learning, let me give you a distinction here. A lot of people say, oh, I have a bad memory, right? They always say, I have memory, or I have focus, or I don't have focus, or I have creativity, I don't have creativity. I want you to scrap that. Creativity is not something you have, it's something you do. Focus is not something you have, focus is something you do. Energy is not something you
Glad you
have
made
or
it back.
don't have, it's something you do. Memory is not something you have, it's something you do. And what's the benefit of turning it into a do as opposed to something you have? What's the benefit? You have control over it because you can put it into a process. It becomes a strategy because there's a strategy for reading faster. There's a strategy for remembering names. There's a strategy for having focus. And it's a verb, not a noun, right? And so the goal here when we're talking about this, memory, for example, a lot of people believe, here, let me shake this up a little bit. There's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There is no such thing as a good or bad memory.
Glad you
There's
made
just
it
a
back.
trained memory and an untrained memory. Does that make sense? Now, here's the thing. I grew up with these learning challenges. I had all these difficulties all through school, all through elementary, middle school, junior high, high school. I had all of these challenges. At the age of 9, I remember a teacher looking at me thinking I wasn't either smart enough to understand what she was saying or wasn't paying attention. She was talking to another adult. She said, that's the boy with a broken brain. I was like at 9 years old, right? And so those kind of identity issues, those beliefs, does that make a difference? Yes, right? And a lot of people believe that they can't do certain things. They can just never remember names. So I could teach them a strategy, but if the belief is not changed, what happens? It's not, because it becomes self-fulfilling. I remember running a marathon, and preparing for it, I read a chapter of one of the books, and it was on the psychology of running a marathon, right? The mental part. And it said this verbatim, word for word, because I'm a memory expert. It said, your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you programmed your supercomputer not to. Isn't that interesting? What I always tell people is that you have to monitor your self-talk. Monitor your self-talk. If you go around tell people, oh, I have a horrible memory, I'm not smart enough, I'm getting too old, fill in the blank. First of all, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. Does that make sense? A lot of people like, oh, I'm so forgetful, I'm so busy, which that whole busyness really bothers me. Like where people, how are you doing? I'm just so crazy, so stressed, so busy. It becomes like a badge of honor that people wear all the time. And then what do you start reinforcing? Being busy, right? But here, going back to this, your self-talk is the program that will run, so you want to be mindful, right? And stand guard to your mind, because your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. Your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. And so going back to this, I want to play this little game, because how many people here, your memory's not quite as good as it used to be? Raise your hand. Now, how many people here, let's take numbers. How many phone numbers did you used to know growing up? How many phone numbers? Shout it out. How many phone numbers when you were younger? All of them, right? Pretty much? How many phone numbers do you know right now? One, two, right? And so how many people here have a number you call all the time, but honestly, if you don't have your phone on or with you or battery set, you honestly do not know that number. You call it every single day almost, or text it or whatever. And so the challenge here is this. The two supervillains that we're talking about is digital overload. Too much information, too little time. The amount of information is doubling at dizzying speed, but how we learn it, how we remember it, has that changed at all? If anything, there's been a decline. The amount of information is doubling like this. Your learning abilities, in terms of your reading, memory, everything, is flatline. That gap creates the stress that you feel on an ongoing basis, right? How do you catch up? How do you keep up? How do you get ahead? All underneath that velocity, right, and that acceleration. The other thing that I talk about supervillains, not just digital overload, because we're going to talk about that in the breakout, is distraction. Digital distraction, right? How many people, I'll tell you the worst habit, because I'm going to talk about this later. The worst habit, and you're gonna hate me for saying this, the first hour of the day is touching your phone. The worst thing you did. The absolute worst. How many people are guilty of doing this stuff? Right? Because you have that addiction to it. And I'll tell you the reason why you don't want to do it. I'll give you two reasons, because I don't want to talk strategy too much. I'm going to talk about it more tomorrow. The strategy, the reason why you don't do it is when you wake up, talking about brainwave states, we're talking about superhero states, your brain cycles through different brainwaves. Beta is when you're most awake. You're in beta, most of you right now. Delta is when you're asleep. Hopefully nobody's in delta right now. Theta is right above delta. That's the state of creativity we talked about, like when you're in the shower, right? You're so relaxed, almost in and out of sleep. You're so creative, right? You're just very inspired. In between theta and beta, when you're most awake, is this state called alpha. How many people are familiar with alpha states? Right? It's a state you go in when you meditate. States you go into when you do deep breathing. States you're also in when you watch television. How many people have ever seen someone watching television, you're trying to talk to them, but they're watching their favorite show, their sports, or whatever it is, or maybe you're guilty of it too, and honestly, that person is not hearing you. You know that? You're talking to them, but they're so in trance, right? Television programming, it's programming them. They're in such trance, they're in an alpha state. And the alpha state is where your conscious mind is set aside, and you're not filtering. It's information just coming in. Alpha state is a great state to learn in, though. Great state to learn facts. Great state to be able to learn foreign languages, also. Great state to learn information, like giving a presentation and scripts. One of the ways we work with actors is put them into an alpha state, so they're in this relaxed state of awareness where the conscious mind is set aside and information is just flowing in, like television. And you can control those states. because you have the responsibility, which is the strategy behind it. And so when we're coming back to memory, I want to play this quick game. Actually, I'll give you a third one. We talked about the first villain, supervillain. We're talking about superheroes. You're a superhero. The supervillains that are taking away from your joy, your productivity, your peace of mind. Digital overwhelm, digital distraction. I'll add a third one I wasn't going to say. Digital dementia. Digital dementia. And this is a real medical term right now. This is the idea that we're outsourcing our brains to our smart devices. We're so reliant on our smartphones that our smartphones are making us stupid. Does that make sense? It's convenient. I don't want to memorize 500 phone numbers, right? Nobody wants to do that. But we've lost the ability to memorize one. Like I give you a 7-digit number now. How difficult that is? If you find that kind of difficult to memorize, like a phone number that you used to do, yes or yes? Because if I take my arm and I put it into a sling for 6 months, does it stay the same? Would it even grow stronger? It would what? It would atrophy and grow weaker. Same thing with your mental muscles. If you're relying on your phone to keep your schedules, your to-dos, do simple. I went out to dinner with 10 people recently. There was 10 of us. And 3 people at the end pulled out their phones to divide the bill by 10, right? And we've lost that ability to use we've lost the ability to be able to do certain things. So that's what digital dementia is. I was talking to Dr. Daniel Amen, who wrote Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, right? Raised $40 million on public broadcast. He was saying, yeah, digital dementia. Here, I got something for you. GPS, relying on GPS, a third-party piece of technology to tell you when and where to turn, when you would normally know that or not know it, is actually getting, people aren't going to the doctors to get checked out, and they would have memory lapses if they didn't see that on GPS. Like, if they didn't have the GPS, they would have memory lapses, and they would go get checked out, and we're not getting that early detection on it just because of that. So how do you keep your brain active? So smart devices could be extremely convenient, but they can be crippling also. So it could be balanced. Yes or yes? All right, so we lost the ability to memorize a number, but I want to try to memorize a group number together today. Let's try to do it. Let's try to reawaken that memory. And everything I talk about, everyone asks like, oh, I have such a horrible memory.
My mana
Can you
is
improve
gone.
my memory? When somebody says, I want a better memory, can you help me with my memory? For me, it's equivalent as a memory coach. Somebody saying, oh, I just wish I was better at sports, right? I want to know what sport specifically so that I can apply it, because there's different memory techniques for giving speeches without notes, or facts, figures, numbers. So let's talk about numbers. This will be a great mental exercise. Let's go around and just raise your hand, and let's give a group number, one number we create together as a group for all of us to try to memorize. And notice what I want you to do is, I believe one of the most important things to be able to get good at is self-awareness. I ultimately think the expert is not the person on stage. Who's the expert? You are, right? You are the expert on you. And what I think is, in terms of, I think self-coaching and self-knowledge is really most of it, And so I think you could learn, I know you could learn better by looking at yourself and seeing what works for you. Does that make sense? And so let's see how we go about remembering things. Let's raise your hand. Let's come up with, let's try to remember a string of numbers, maybe 10 or 20 numbers. And we'll do the best we can. You can write them down, and then let's see if we can memorize them together. So raise your hand. Let's do them at 2 at a time. So instead of saying 1, 7, just say 17. And then just 2-digit numbers.
88.
88. So everyone writes 88, right? We got the game here? We're going to keep on going until we get to a threshold, and we see if we can memorize these numbers. Yes?
54.
54. I'll repeat it so you guys hear it also as well. 54.
35.
35. Very good. 35. 20. I'm sorry? 21. If we're having trouble coming up with numbers, I have to take this in a totally different direction.
99.
What's that?
99.
99. Bingo. 99. By the way, how many have we had so far, single digits? Just give it 10. Does everybody have 10? I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. All right. Something over here?
66.
11. Okay, 11.
66.
66. 11 and 66.
23.
Raise your hand so I can see.
23.
23. Number 23. Okay. Quick. I'm sorry? 13. 13. How many? It's a lot of numbers, right?
77.
Hold on 1 second. So it's 13. Let's count 13 after that also as well. What's that?
77.
77. How many numbers is that, by the way? 20? Are we doing pretty good? How many do you remember so far, do you think? Let's do a few more. Let's do a few more for the heck of it. Go ahead. I'm sorry? 38 or 39? Let's go with 39. 39. And before that was 77, is that true? Very good. We're on the same page. 39. Let's do a couple more. Yeah, here?
42.
42. Good. 42. Let's do three. Let's do three more. 06.